Hello and welcome to today's Criterion Learning Series presentation. My name is Steve Tompkins. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect with Criterion. And today we will be talking about scheduling in Criterion HCM. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started here. And I will switch over to my browser and you'll be able to see this. Now, this does have a little bit of a component in self-service. After I schedule somebody, I will be able to view my schedule in self-service, but we're going to do, of course, most of the setup in the scheduling module of the system here. So to access that easiest from self-service, you can get to it by clicking here, which I've already opened right here. But let me remind you, of course, if you're already in HR or payroll, you can get over to scheduling right there. And that does require us to come here because it'll change the menu at the top. So unlike many of the times when we can just do things over here, it does require you to go to the scheduling module. Now, scheduling has been significantly enhanced recently, and so we're going to kind of start at the beginning here with shift groups and how those works, and then we'll go into the assignments of schedules. And as we're talking today, I do want to remind you that there is a chat feature and a Q&A. So if you do have questions, we'll try to answer them and respond to chats as necessary. And if we cannot answer it today, then what we'll do is we'll get back to you through support and answer those questions. So feel free to ask those as needed. So I'm going to start with, I already have a shift group here, but I'm going to create a new one. I do want to show that if you have multiple shift groups, perhaps older ones, you can toggle this on and off to see those shift groups. And these are set up by employer. So if you have multiple employers, you'd have to set up the shift groups for each employer there. But I'll go ahead and add a new one. And you'll see here as I do this, of course, the name of the shift, whatever it's going to be. This could be, let's say, a project. It could be a certain location. Maybe it's the shift for everybody is going to use it. You're certainly welcome to do whatever you like. I recommend you make it descriptive, but you could do something as simple as, oops, excuse that typo, shift group A there. So you can see how that works. Now, if you would like, one of the nice features is you can tie it to a timesheet. And what that does is it allows you to take the settings from that timesheet. For example, maybe you have projects and tasks and set up the shift group to show that information from the timesheet. And as a reminder, where timesheets are located in case you're not familiar with them. Now, you may not be using time at all, which is okay. You don't have to have a timesheet, but timesheet layouts, and here are your timesheets right here. And this is where you might see your project and task right here under your configuration. So like here, I have project and task. All right, so going back to that, I'm going to choose a timesheet. What this will allow me to do is I can tell it to use the project and task information from my shift setup when somebody clocks in. So they don't have to necessarily remember the project and task or whatever you refer to those things as when they're clocking in. So that's what that allows that to do right there. You'll see when I selected that, the sub-project and subtask went away because they are not on my timesheet. So it matches up with those. All right, it also pulled the start date from the timesheet because that's in my settings there. Here's if you require a certain number of employees for this group. So maybe you're doing the shift scheduling for a project and you need 20 people to be there. You can do that. Just type 20 as an example, and you could have 20 people there. That'll come into play when we talk about the assignments. All right, so I'll just put 10 just so you can see what that looks like. This is not a required field. As you can see, I can do whatever I like there. A rotating shift. So this might be useful if you have maybe, a couple of days a week that are off and they rotate through the population of the assignments. And, for week one, a group has Sunday and Monday off. And then week two, they have Tuesday and Wednesday off, or whatever that rotation might be. Or maybe you do a rotation of, day shift, afternoon or swing shift, and graveyard shift, and you want to rotate people through those. It allows you to do that and then do that rotation when you're doing the scheduling. So that's what that checkbox is right here. If this is assigned to a certain location, work location, you can go ahead and select that right here. All right, when I do that, of course, it's going to show the time zone. And, of course, that means the scheduling is going to be using, in my example, the Eastern time zone. right? That is not a requirement, but you can put that there. If you do have work areas at the location, you can then select the work areas. You may or may not have those set up, but you can do that if you need to get very specific. Let's say it's at a certain location, and then this is a building at that location or something like that. All right, and then the project and task. So I have to choose the project before I can get down to the task. And of course, you need to have the task set up under the project. So that's part of that configuration that would happen over under projects. So you can see how that would work there. All right, you don't have to do these either. So you can leave these blank, and then maybe when you get down to the assignment, you say, here's the project you're going to be working on, and select that information there. All right, before we go to adding an actual shift, which is what's down here, let's look at these settings up here. So first off, shift setting determined by, that is tied back to the timesheet layout. If I have a timesheet layout here, and let's say as an example, I set my schedule to be from 8 in the morning to 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I set a certain project and task for that for one or more employees. If they clock in any time between 8 and 12, it's going to use that project and task on the timesheet. All right, so it would pick out whatever is on 8 to 12. If they sign in at, let's say, 3 in the afternoon, it's not going to, because it's not during that shift. All right, and here you say, I don't want to populate the timesheet. I'm going to make the employee select it when they go to clock in. All right, and here you notice I can tell it, don't allow them to override what's on the shift. So if you schedule them from 8 to 12 to do this project and task, when they go to clock in, that'll be grayed out. They cannot change it. They'll have to use whatever the settings are from that particular schedule. So that's your enhanced settings right there. And here's where I can set up the shift assignments requirements for this group. So it's everything in here, all the shifts can use these. So I might say I require a certain position or position for this one here. So let's say this was specifically for ticketing. I might require the ticketing supervisor and a ticket seller or something like that. So I can choose those things out here if I like, one or more. All right, and that means when I go to actually do the assignments, it's going to show me by default the people who meet these requirements. And again, I can go down to the skills, and perhaps I've got a skill on speaking German. All right, that's my skill right there. So not only do they need to be a ticketing supervisor or ticketing seller, they also need to speak German. And again, I can get even more specific and say they must also have first aid certification. So all 4 of these, or I should say 3, either ticket seller or ticket supervisor with these 2 skills and certifications would be needed for the scheduling. All right, so just give you an idea of what that could be used for. It's, again, not a requirement to set this up. You can leave this blank and then be able to select any employees as needed. Okay, so that's the kind of the top level of the shift group settings here. Now we're actually going to set up each individual shift that might be applicable here. So when I add one here, you'll notice I have the name of the shift. And let's say, as an example, I'm going to call this day shift. Okay, so I'll do a day shift and a night shift just to give you an idea. So here, because I did not choose a certain work location, I can now set it down here if I wanted to. Same thing with the project and the task. I didn't set it at this level, but I might want to set it down at this level on the individual shift. All right, so I might say this is the Criterion project, and that's that right there. So you can certainly set these down here if you need to. And the sequence would apply if I was doing this rotation. So this might be the first one, and then swing shift is the second one, and graveyard shift is the third, and then it could rotate through as I do the scheduling. All right, I also have these requirements down on the shift level if I would like. So here you can see for this shift schedule, I might say I have certain requirements. So you remember I said ticket supervisor and ticket seller are the required positions, but now for day shift, I might say that not only do I have those position requirements, but now I need them to know how to do plumbing. So if they meet all of those, so you'll see here, including the shift group requirements, so seller or supervisor, and they have scheduling, or excuse me, plumbing, then they're going to be eligible for this particular shift. I can say, well, let's ignore whatever at the shift group level and just look at this particular shift level. All right, so that's how that would work right there. So I can do a mixture of them, or I can have them stand alone by themselves. I'm going to just remove that for right now, but I can do that if I need to. All right, so I'm going to do day shift, and then I'm going to do one called night shift. Just so you can kind of see how that works here. I'll call it now. The sequence is not required if I'm not using the rotation, so I can leave this as 0. But if I wanted to maybe numerically sort them, I might set this one as 1 and that one is 2, so that way I could sort on this column if I wanted to. All right, then I can go through and put the schedule for the different days. So I do that by hitting the plus, and then each day I can hit the plus right here, and I can add multiple if I need to. So I might say this is going to be 8, and I'm just typing it to 12. And then let's say 12:30 to 4:30. All right, so really very easy to do that scheduling. What I found works for me is I'll actually copy some of these things and paste. So as an example, I might want to copy 8 a.m. and then use that over and over again. But it's easy enough to copy this because this is kind of like a one-time setting. You don't have to do it, every single week. So you can easily do this. And this is my settings for the clock. I might have a 24-hour clock, in which case I might be typing 12:30 to 1600 as an example right there. All right, now you'll see because I did that copy, I can paste if I want to. So really very easy to do this. I'll just do 3 days just to get you an idea. Well, I'll do the whole thing here just so you can kind of see a whole weekly schedule out here and adding these. Now I'm making the same for every day, but of course they could be different depending on your scheduling needs. Oops. In fact, there we go, 12 to 12:30. And then 4:30. Now I happen to be doing it right at the hour, but I could do like 8:01 a.m. That's still valid because that is a time. And again, those requirements for like being between the start and end would apply. If somebody clocked in at 8:01 or 12, let's say I did 12:16 p.m. and then somebody clocked in at 12:17 or 12:30, it wouldn't pick up this one. But you can do that if you need to do the minutes. This is if you want to just go to like the 15-minute increments, you can do that. And of course I can, scroll down the list and click on the box if I need to do that. But I find it faster as I've been doing this to just type it in. Right, so really very easy there. And then I can come down here and this is going to be my night shift. Let's just say it starts at 4. And rather than doing both sides of it, I'm going to do like that. Okay, so I'm not doing the extra ones in here, but you can add as many as you need. If I needed to put, maybe 6 or 10 or whatever in here, I can have as many different rows as I need to. And you can see here, I can remove the interval. All right, so really very easy to do that. 4 p.m. to 12. Okay, and you'll notice, of course, there's a little bit of an overlap, which is okay, probably what you'd want to do so that there can be a transition from one shift to another. Of course, your scheduling needs might be different than my little demo here that I've set up, but you can see how that works. And of course, I could do the weekend and things like that. So very easy to do this. All right, so I have those set up and I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now I can come back in at any time and I can, add and edit if I need to. But this is the defaults that are going to be used when I go to do the assignment, which is actually adding employees to the schedule. All right, so I can come in if I needed to change something and, edit this, but this would be like for every Friday, not just for, this coming Friday or something like that. All right, so like I said, really easy there. You'll notice on the left, I can search if I need to. If I have several shifts and I want to, I know the name of it is, the Johnson Hotel, I can type in Johnson and it would show up. Or I know it's at a certain location, I could, look for that location like Richmond, and you'll see how that works right there. All right, so really very easy to do that. And let's look at the assignments. Okay, now I don't have anything currently assigned today or in the future. So we don't hide or excuse me, we do hide the ones that are inactive. Inactive means it's in the past. All right, so you see here as I go out, I do have some from several years ago that I can look at if I ever need to go back. I can go out there and see that, here's my call center, here's my shift indigo, which was one of my inactive shift groups out there. So that's what this toggle does. This is showing current and future. So here I'm going to go ahead and add the shift assignment. It's using the shift group I just created. And here you'll see I have several dates I can do. I can go backwards. If I wanted to go back and do the scheduling from a few weeks ago, I could, but let's just go to the current week. So this is the start of the week. So this would be from the 4th through the 10th, and this would be next week. All right, and I'm going to create blank. Now I'm going to create blank because I don't have one yet, but I do have the option. You'll see if I go to do next week, it's going to ask me, do I want to copy or rotate? And when I do this, because I did not create those past ones, it's saying here, what do you want to do? Do you want to just create it anyways, creating a gap? Well, that's okay. I don't need to do the older schedule in my situation. But if you wanted to, you can go back in and say no and go back to 413 and fill in if you like, but you're not required to do that. Okay, so now there's two views for creating the schedule here. I'll show you this view and the other view. So here I can go ahead and add an employee to the day shift or the night shift very easily just by hitting the plus. Now, remember the requirements. I said they have to either be a seller or a supervisor. So that's what's showing up by default because I have this box checked right here. All right, so that's why I'm only seeing this. There's more than 20 employees in my company, but these are the people who are sellers or supervisors. They have met the criteria. And then you'll see here, I can show everybody if I needed to. And that would also apply to the skills and certifications. If I did have that German skill and first aid certification, I think it was, I would only see those people who met the criteria up front. But here I can go in and say, let's search by a certain thing. Maybe I do want to find anybody who speaks German. I don't know if I have anybody. I don't. Maybe somebody by last name or something. I can do these searches up here using one or more of these up there. So if I want to say seller and the last name is Collins, it's going to narrow it down to just that particular person. Once I've selected them, add them in. You'll see it filled in those defaults for this person, but I can go and override them if I need to. Perhaps he can't work 8 to 12, or on the setup of the shift or the shift group, we said it worked for a certain project, and I want to override that. I can do that right here by saying, let's override that and say his particular project for this one is this Sierra West. All right, and then the afternoon, I want to do another override, and it's going to be the Criterion project. All right, so that's for his individual assignment for this day. That's what we're doing versus maybe what's set up on the shift group. All right, and of course I can schedule others. Let's go ahead and just put some other people on here very easily, add them to that, and I'll do the same thing in the night shift. All right, so I can go through and let's pick these people here. All right, so really very easy. If I needed to change not only the project or that stuff, I could also change it. Perhaps he needed to go at 3 p.m. or she needed to go at 3 p.m. versus 4, just like that, and override that. All right, so very easy to do that on this screen here. I do want to show you our new screen. So first thing I'm gonna do is just save this to show. I'm gonna go back to the previous screen and show you how I can create a second version of this maybe for next week. You'll see I can do add shift assignment. Now when I do this one here, this is the next week I can create, but now I have options to what do I want to do? Do I want to start with a blank slate like I just did? Do I want to copy from a prior schedule and then edit it? And as I mentioned, if I did the rotation, do I actually want it to rotate? I don't have it set up, so that won't do anything. But if I did, it can rotate it. All right. And so now it brings up the schedule for 5/11 through 5/17, and it kept everything, including that edit, because I told it to copy what was there, not to go back to the defaults, but to copy. That would include also the overrides. If I did overrides, I can copy everything down. Now, if I did want to go back to the default, so Stuart and I really made a bunch of changes in here, I could always delete him and then add him back. So that way I can get back to the defaults if I wanted to. Oh, I would, I don't know, maybe I need to save. first. But anyways, I want to show you how easy it is to do that there. But let's go ahead and look at our more visual view of this. So it's right here called the shift view. And this is a more visual view of the scheduling. So here you can see all the people that are scheduled for the different shifts. And you'll see there's a bunch of controls here. So first off, if I move forward, I can go to next week. And of course, I can go further out as necessary. If I want to get back to today's shift, I can go right here. And it's going to take me back to the shift for today. You'll see here it's telling me I require 2 people for this. There's 5 people scheduled, so I can see, where we're at as far as that's concerned. And then you'll notice here, as I go down, I've got the different people on here. It's telling me how many people are scheduled. So 8 shifts are scheduled because 12:30 to 4 is one and 8 to 12 is another. So you'll see how those are showing those on there. And if I needed to edit it, I can click on this and get to that same edit capabilities as I need to be able to do that. If I wanted to maybe remove Charlene from here, I can remove that. And she's just going to be on there one time. And now it's going to say 7 instead of 8. And you'll see here it's telling me the total hours that are scheduled for the day. So really easy to do that. If I need to add somebody, this is going to add an employee just to this particular day. And I can go out there and pick somebody. All right, so added that. And if, of course, I need to add somebody to the entire week, you hit plus right here and add them to the entire week. All right, so really very easy to do that. And you'll notice here I can also filter it if I need to. I don't know if anybody's in any of these. Let's go ticket sellers. I think I have some supervisors out there. That should show me just my ticket sellers. So now I can just see my ticket sellers. All right, the other ones were supervisors. And finally, if I need to just minimize that group because I want to just look at one of them, I can do that. All right, now let's look at what might happen if somebody, perhaps they have some time off on this day, or maybe they've gone through the availability. So I'm going to jump back over to the self-service, and I'm going to put somebody on a time off on, let's say, Friday. In fact, make it even easier. Well, let's do it in self-service so you can see it. I didn't schedule Ted on a schedule there. However, I can go out and set the availability for my employees. And let's see here, I'll pick somebody. And I'm just going to pick Albert. I don't know, what his situation is, but this is something where I can put the availability for my employee out there. So maybe I talk with Albert and he says, you know what, I can't work on Friday morning because, I got to go take my kids to school, but I can work Friday night. So that, if you need to go ahead and do that, that's fine. So he might just say, take kids to school. It's going to be on Friday at, let's say, 7 a.m. And it just takes a little bit of time. So he's going to say 7 to 9. He's not available. All right. I could make this recurring. So every Friday, he's not available through a certain date. So maybe the school year ends on the 20th. So every Friday from 7 to 9 through June 20th, he's not available. And then it's going to show this little block on his schedule. All right, so you'll see how that works there. Now, I'm looking at Albert, but of course, there could be several employees that have that. And if I logged in as Albert, he also has a view that shows that information there. So when I come back out to the assignment and I go to add somebody, now I don't think Albert is a ticket seller, but that's okay. I'm going to tell not to use the shift requirements. Oh, is that him? No, Albert Carpenter. Okay, so I'm going to just get rid of that. So here's Albert Carpenter. And where did I add? Oh, let me get her. He's not a ticket seller, so he's not showing up there. And it will show right here that he's unavailable. So I can clearly see he's unavailable during that time frame. It doesn't stop me from scheduling him, but it does give me like a orange, color right here, a little triangle. He's not available during this time. So it gives you some options like, okay, well, he's not available between 7 and 9. Maybe I just want to change this from 8 to 9. Or maybe I want to say, yeah, let's just remove him from the morning. We'll just get rid of this and we're going to add him down into the evening shift. Okay, so we'll remove him from there and then we'll come down to here and I'll add Albert down here. So that's how you can see that information on there and see that right on the timesheet. And the same thing would happen if I had a time off request for somebody. So let me bring that up for somebody real quick. I'll put a time off in for one of my employees and you'll see that right there. So let's go to this ticket seller right here. I don't know if she has a time off plan, but let's see if she does. Okay, hasn't accrued in a while, but let's go. I should be able to put a plan out there for, let's just say for Friday all day. All right, so she's got vacation. All right, so we can go there. Let me come back out to here. And on this view, and I should have shown the other view with Albert, it would have showed he was unavailable. On this view, as you can see, it does show that she has time off on this day. So I can see that there. It's not in color, but I can see it. It's that right there at the top of that. But I can see here, if I go back into this view, that she's off on this day. So time off on that day. All right, so really very straightforward, easy to see that as I'm doing my scheduling. Okay, so then I can decide, who's going to cover her. Am I going to, maybe just I don't need coverage or whatever the situation, I can go ahead and remove her right here if I needed to, or now I find somebody else to work on that day because she's not available. So I come out here and I say, let's do Audrey's going to cover for her. Right. So really, like I said, really easy to do that and put that information out there for my employees who are doing my scheduling. So I think there was a question on can you um, see somebody who can't work on that day? That's how you can see that as I'm doing the scheduling. Of course, if they come in later and they do that, there are notifications that you can have sent out when somebody does a block that can go to their manager and say, hey, somebody put in that they're unavailable on Friday. But hopefully they would also tell you if you've already scheduled them and then they say, oh, I can't work on Friday. I would hope they'd also talk to you, but there is a notification that can go out. Okay, so that is the shift and the shift assignments in there. Now, there are other things that will happen when they go to clock in. So I wanted to show you, I'm going to, let me see somebody who's scheduled for this week, and I'm going to log in as them, and you'll be able to see here. So let's see, as an example, Charlene, because she's got this time off on here. I'll go ahead and log in as her, and you'll see, what it looks like from her perspective for the schedule and when she goes to clock in and things like that. So give me one moment to log out and log back in as her. In fact, I'll do it on another browser so we can see that very easily. I'll give me a second to I'm just opening it up in another browser. It's taking a little longer than I expected to open that browser. So give me you know what, it's not opening here. I can log in. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Just as they say it, my computer starts responding. So here it is. Okay. So Charlene's now logged in here. And just so you can see, when she goes to look at her schedule, it's called My Schedule, she's able to see not only the schedule, but also her time off. And of course, as I showed you, the manager can add unavailability, but she could as well. So maybe she let us know on Monday or something like that, but she can add unavailable out here and say piano practice or something like that. Let's just go back in time and say it was on this day from 8 to 11. Just so you can see what it looks like is a different color. So yellow is the schedule, red is a unavailability, and then green, that's the color I've set for my vacation. So that's why it's green. So whatever colors you have in your system for your time off is going to show there, and mine's all day. So you'll see it's from 12 till the end of the day because it's all day. All right, if I had done, let's say, from 9 to noon because it was sick leave and that's a doctor's appointment, it would just be on that time right there. So she could see this, and then if she clicks on the shift, it'll give me the detail. If this had anything about a project and task, I'd be able to see that right here. And I should have pointed out, you can put a note on there as well, back on the schedule. When you click on that, you may have seen a note field. I didn't point it out, but you can put a note there. So if you wanted something to show up on her schedule about a note for whatever the situation is, uh, you know, working with a certain person, they'll be able to see that on their schedule. All right, so if I go out and do that, I can see, oh, I saved it, but I didn't. I need to hit refresh to get to update there. Now, when she goes to clock in, I assume she's an hourly person. So I believe I'm in the window of time to be able to clock in. And oh shoot, let me go ahead and put a project on today from 8 to 12. So let me go to this. I apologize. Let me show you what I'm doing so you can see this as I'm kind of fumbling my way through this. I forgot to put a schedule on here. So here you'll see work with Diane. I'm going to override this and say this is going to be the Criterion project. And then this one is going to be the Sierra West project. So we'll change that and save it. And now I will go back to her and I'll be able to see that information. And then when she clocks in, it will also be in there. All right, so let me go to today and switch back over. You'll see here, it says the Criterion project right there as the project. And then there's that note. So you're able to see how that's there. Now, this is Eastern time. So this should be what actually applies because it's after 12:30 Eastern time. So when I go to clock in, and I believe I had my settings there to do that, it should repopulate the project. Now I didn't have tasks, so the task is blank. All right, so then I can check in, and it's asking me for my GPS location. Oh, I guess I already have her clocked in, so it's not letting me do that. I might have a timesheet created for her, but it's not letting me. But that's not it. That's nothing with the schedule. That is my timesheet is created that way, where she has an open. She's got already scheduled, or excuse me, she's already clocked in. Somehow I might have put something in there. But that would read that project because her time right now is between 12:30 and 4:30 Eastern time, and that's where she's located. All right. I saw the question from Scott. So let me just talk about this question out there. His question was, does this impact payroll? So, and specifically about rounding. Now, if you have the system set to do rounding rules, then that is a timesheet setting, nothing to do with the schedule. So let's say an example with Charlene here. She shows up at 7:50 and clocks in. If I do not have any rounding set up, it's going to record it as 7:50, even though she's scheduled at 8. And then maybe she works it all the way till 4:20. She leaves a little bit early to make up for the 10 minutes early. She leaves at 4:20. If there's no rounding, it's going to clock her out at 4:20. So the schedule does not affect the rounding. On a timesheet layout, you can set rounding rules, and maybe it's every 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever your rule is for rounding on the timesheet layout, but it has nothing to do with the schedule. All right. If you think that'd be a great idea, then I have a little thing to show you, which is the customer feature request, but it doesn't do that right now. Okay, I see. Yes, there's another question about finding a sub for somebody. I will say that we do have an enhancement for shift swapping coming in the next release, and I'm not going to disclose more than that, but it will allow employees to swap shifts with each other with a workflow approval. So please, anticipate that and look forward to my announcement of that in our next webinar. I know it's currently in testing, so it should be coming very soon. We also have other enhancements coming to scheduling. So yeah, and of course, if you do have your own feedback on what you think should be in scheduling, we do highly encourage you to recommend those things and reach out to support if you happen to be talking to support already, or you can come in here and you can propose a new idea with scheduling and say, I would love it if the rounding looked at the schedule versus the timesheet layout as an example. So go to the customer feature request portal off of this link or maybe just save this link, and then you could suggest that as a new post. So that'd be a great idea out there for the shift scheduling and rounding if you want to be able to do that out there. So thank you for attending the training today. I do want to bring up the schedule for our a future Criterion Learning Series. So let me share that screen here. It's not showing up for me in Zoom. I'm a little Zoom had an update for me, and I am a little bit thrown off today. I apologize for that. But here's our schedule for the next four four webinars for the Criterion Learning Series. So we're going to cover a little bit of payroll and a little bit of HR/core, I guess you could call it. So next time, we're going to talk about incomes. It's something that we covered a few years ago. We've had a number of enhancements between then and now, so we're going to revisit incomes. So if you are a payroll person or you have a payroll person in your life, ask them to attend, or they might be interested in attending. And then we're going to kind of come back to self-service a little bit, talk about employee engagement. So the feed and the various things that show up in self-service, we're going to talk about how you can use that to your advantage in self-service. And then back to payroll, talking about deductions and how you can configure the system with various types of deductions. Again, since the last time, we've had a number of enhancements around deductions, so we're going to talk about those. And finally, not finally, because there will be more after July 3rd, but on July 3rd, we're going to talk about custom fields and screens. So if you like to add fields and screens to the system, we'll talk about how you do that and where they show up. So we do look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks at one or more of these upcoming webinars. If you do have any additional questions about scheduling or really anything in the system, please feel free to reach out to support@criterionhcm.com. Or if you are working with a partner, you can reach out through your partner and they should be able to answer your questions that you might have. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a nice day.